I'm very grateful for the folks that supported the contract extension and amendment, and I'm also grateful for the feedback that we got from a lot of new members. We'll talk about that in a second, but it's been the best professional opportunity and job I've ever had. It's an honor to serve in this job, I think.
Rausch here for Franklin Matters, Franklin Public Radio, available anywhere, anytime on the internet. Yes, WFPR.FM, and in the local Franklin, Mass. FM radio dial. Yeah, the dial, maybe the push buttons, the knobs, 102.9 is the number. Here today with our Town Administrator, Jamie Hellen. Jamie, how are you doing today?
Fantastic, soaking up the end of summer, and impressed that you went through knobs and buttons and you went through the whole suite of options for the listeners out there. That was pretty cool.
Well, we try to make this accessible and accommodating to the people, and that's something clearly in your service organization. We've talked about that before. You've got to reach the people in their way. Hopefully, maybe, even like Amazon.com, except in government, we know things take a little bit of time.
There's no Amazon same-day Prime usually here, but you're right. We got to do things in a variety of formats. We got to try to present materials in a lot of different ways because everybody gets their information from different places these days.
Right.
It's not always Channel 5 at 6:30, right? So,
no.
So we're accommodating. You guys are, we are, and here we are to summarize the summer.
Having fun. So I know when we talked a year ago with Lucas, you had both talked about your summer concerts that you were going to, and then I think you and I caught up earlier, so the Lady Gaga summer concert that you did last summer was good. Did you hit any concerts this summer?
Not many. My wife and I have a country rock singer at a place in Worcester called Off the Rails. Her name is Elle King. Some people have heard of her. You know a few of her songs. And it's been pretty light. We're going on a little bit of a after Lady Gaga, which was more than enough.
Kind of the pinnacle.
There's a couple. Well, she was in the spring as well. She was in Boston, but
okay.
We've tried to lay a little bit low, enjoy the beach. We're going away for a little while in October. I'm going to my national conference this year,
right?
Which is really important. So I can't say I've been to too much. Plus, as you know, we were just speaking offline, we're getting ready for a little bit of a home renovation here as well. So that's like taking up all the time is really the home stuff. And so, but it's been a great summer. Quietly, it's kind of been a really good one. It's been good to have the budget over with in June. I think there's been a little bit of space. The council had one meeting in July, one joint budget, which we'll get to later, I'm sure, last week. We had a council meeting last week as well. But, I think it was really important after this particularly 8 or 9 months with a new council, 7 of 9 new members, a lot of learning curve, a lot of meetings, a lot of late nights.
Right.
And obviously doing it myself without an assistant town administrator. I feel like we got through a great 8 or 9 months considering the circumstances, and things seem to be going very well. So I think it's been a pretty good summer so far.
Yeah, because I think we've talked, and certainly people are aware, and behind us now, we went from the high school graduation right into, Strawberry Stroll, right into Porch Fest, right into, effectively, Pride, and then 4th of July, and we had a heck of a lot of stuff going on in that big crunch period, but fortunately the meetings were, as you said, even school committee only met, I think, once during July and once in the town council once in July, so I've had a little bit of a breather too, but also because I've got some work being done in the house, so my contract schedule has hindered some of the audios that I've wanted to do, but hopefully this will be over soon and we'll get back into a regular rhythm of doing some interviews because there is so much going on.
There's a lot going on. I don't want to get into the rhythm of interviews because the rhythm of interviews then means we're back into the fall.
I know.
But you're right. At some point, you kind of wake up after Labor Day like we all do and want to get back into kind of a rest of the year rhythm. It's really important for everybody to take a break. It's important for everybody to take a break from one another. It's important for people to take a break from the grind of the every couple week meetings and all the memos and books and reading and issues. I mean, we had the Millis and Medway town officials in to look at a possible sewer transfer over the summer.
Right.
We're going to be looking at it again on September 2nd. But that's a lot of work, for a lot of, the counselors and the staff, particularly the counselors and the public. These are the things that are working on all year, all the time that you don't always talk about. And they take a lot of focus and a lot of time to make sure you're making the right decisions. So it's good to be able to take a few weeks off here or there before the Rugrats go back to school after September 2nd. And then we're into the fall, and we all know what happens then.
Yeah, it really gets busy.
It really gets busy, September. Yeah, I try to drag out summer as long as I can. Technically, summer doesn't end until September 22nd. September 22nd.
Correct.
But,
right.
And I try to take it a little longer than that. I'm not shy about going to October.
Right. Maybe you don't wear white after Labor Day, but you can still have that feeling, summer type feeling.
You can. So it's been a good one. I know it's hot a little bit, but we got some good rain too, which we needed. As people know, we're kind of in a little bit of a minor drought statewide. So it's been fair and balanced. This past weekend was unbelievably beautiful weather.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
So, I'm still in the summer. I'm still in the dog days of summer.
Yep. That's a good place to be at this point. Yeah. But while we're going to do this, clearly the one key piece, and last week the council met for about 4 hours in executive session to work through the negotiation on your contract. And then 2 pieces, 5 minutes initially, 5 minutes at the end, was their public portion of the meeting, so people can catch up very quickly as to what happened in the meeting, because they only have to listen to about 10 minutes. And you got a contract.
Yes.
Effectively an extension, but yeah.
Yeah, and some tweaks and changes to some of the language. You're right. I mean, it feels like if I'm on the outside, right, it's like they met for 3 or 4 hours and we only see 5 minutes on each side. I know you posted it, but I think it's made its way around town and LinkedIn and social media, but there was a press release, the council did put out, and I thought they did a good job addressing kind of what I'm sure some people will see, which was the split vote, which, is certainly respected and understanding. But, in the big picture of it, it's like one of those moments, and it's funny being on radio talking to you because it becomes a little bit reflective with some humility and reflection. I'm finishing my 11th year in Franklin, which seems surreal. And I'm very grateful for the folks that supported the contract extension and amendment. And I'm also grateful for the feedback that we got from a lot of new members. We'll talk about that in a second, but it's been the best professional opportunity and job I've ever had. It's an honor to serve in this job. I think overall, I've been able to live up to the expectations across the community. We've gotten a lot done during 7 extremely turbulent years. Whether it's the SNET Trail or community preservation or the AAA bond rating or, a whole variety of things that have gone really well.
And just pause on that for a minute, because while you're going through those each of them were significant accomplishments.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And Schmidt Farm with it, and the historic the Habitat House. I mean,
sure.
We could.
There's a bunch. There's a bunch there.
There's a lot, and as I've always said, Jeff said it too. The council and the other elected boards in town shouldn't shy away from their role in all of this. I can't do this without them. They're the ones that raise their hands and support the Community Preservation Act. They're the ones that raise their hands to buy the SNET Trail. They're the ones that said, hey, let's go for a AAA bond rating. They've always seen the big picture. They've always been able to keep the train on the tracks. We've got an unbelievable staff culture, which has improved significantly over the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years since I've been here. I love working with these people. They're some of the best public servants I've ever met in my life. Some of the best people I've ever met in my life.
Right.
And I think we're very, very fortunate and very lucky to be able to be a part of a community that has such a great organization and a great community. And I guess before, I know you probably have a quick question or two on this, but, make no mistake, it's not invisible to me, that there are people out there that are going to have their opinions heard. They're going to complain. We all know that's part of the job. We all know that the CEO of any company, any private company or public entity is going to be scapegoated and blame game, and people want to do all that stuff. But even though there were a few dissenting votes, and even though there was a 5-4 vote, I think there is still a significant amount of faith from those 4 members that I'm doing a great job. They've all told me it wasn't personal or professional.
Right.
They told me it was more about the process, and I can understand that, right? This was something that, as you know, as an observer, had been, this is a year outdated. The former council started this negotiation with me last summer. And, for a variety of different reasons, it didn't matriculate in the fall. So like any issue, like sewer and Millicent Medway, these things are tax rates, there's a lot of stuff that's been working throughout the town for many years, and this council just happened to be the council that had to come in and deal with it and address it. But they made the right decision, I believe, for the community as a whole, given all of the different factors. And I'm not certainly, dismissed in any way at the 4 people who voted no. They've all talked to me about it. Councilor Grella's quote was in the press release. Councilor Molloy did come in and talk to me, one-on-one for about 20 minutes the other night before joint budget, and wanted to make sure he knew he had faith in my leadership and this wasn't something that was about me or the work I'm doing. And Councilor Callaway Tripp and Councilor Griffith both walked up to me at the end of the meeting and said, we want to talk to you for a few minutes. Like, this isn't personal. This isn't professional. They told me that they had preferred that the evaluation would have been done first and then done this. And I understand those perceptions. I think this is all a learning curve for all of them and all of us. And I'm just glad to be here through June 30th of 2030. And on that heels, too, an important factor in all this is we're on the cusp of hiring a deputy town administrator. Which I think you and I can agree got a little politicized over the last year or two. I don't think from the quality of work that Amy Frigiletti did. She did amazing work, but really, things get caught in the political cycle sometimes. And it's overwhelmingly the Finance Committee and the Council supported that position. And so we'll probably be making an announcement in the next 2 or 3 weeks, as soon as possible, as what the start date of that person will be. And I will give you a little teaser here, assuming these things work out in the next couple weeks, there's likely to be a shift in responsibilities and some change that I think is going to be healthy for, the next 4 years for me, but also healthy for the council, the community, and all the other folks in town. So very grateful to be here. Love being here, Steve. Love Franklin. Don't really want to work anywhere else. Great team and great residents and great community, and hopefully we can make it even that much better over the next few years.
Yeah, I think the 2 points that I'd help to try and reinforce, I think with your help, clearly the council, as you mentioned, was kind of in a learning curve, and they still are. Respectfully, there's going to be a bunch of things that are still coming to them for the first time, which will take a little bit more time to explain, this is what you need to do, this is how you do it, et cetera, et cetera. Then they can make a decision, hopefully a good informed one as they have. But then the other piece was around the resources, and clearly even at the beginning, they were still looking for you to do things, and you couldn't do them because you didn't have the office staffed appropriately to do so. Yeah. And one of which I think was, ironically, the fact that the review piece is going to come after. Well, that was on their call. Right. They could have done the review. They've had some months to do so. Maybe they forgot about it. Maybe they, So, yeah.
What's really hard about it, and I think we all can have a lot of empathy, there's no, obviously there's some detractors of mine that live in the community, but in reflection, it's not a significant amount of folks where it's the number one priority that's necessarily on a political radar. There's certainly a few people of certain, areas that are disappointed with certain decisions. And look, after 11 years, you're going to be in my position. You're going to make enough decisions that people at some point, it just becomes a populace of people that are upset or disappointed in certain decisions that are made. It just comes in organizational behavior.
Yeah.
But to your point, there is a responsibility from the elected officials that there's a contract that's in effect, and they should know that contract. And I think that now all of them have certainly read all that and understand the importance of that and all the details and specifics in it. They haven't completed my evaluation from 2025. So, the good news is that's going to come up over the next month or so, probably by the mid-September. But, I do think as they continue to learn, it's hard to referee if you're them. People are emailing us about flock cameras all the time. People are emailing us about Davis Thayer and some of the other things we'll talk about in this episode.
Right. Sure.
Necessarily emailing us about the town administrator's contract or like Millis and Medway sewer, agreements or other things that are sometimes on the agenda. And that's just, I actually believe that in some ways is also a reflection on an authentic and genuine group of people who are trying to be there for residents. They all ran on trying to be more responsive. They thought there was a problem in the community on being responsive. From what I understand, they had a pretty good set of office hours last week where a dozen or so folks came. I think they're trying to spend a lot of their time out there responding to people's emails, learning what people are asking about, learning from the staff. And as you know, Steve, you've watched this for a long time. Being a member of the town council is a lot bigger job than a lot of people give it.
Oh, for sure.
It's a lot of information to learn. Yeah. And if you have not been either in the volunteer positions before, or if you're not spending an inordinate amount of time really understanding and going out there and talking to the staff, doing the work you need to do in the community, some of these decisions can be very hard and very daunting. And we're there as a staff to try to back them up. We do think we do a great job making sure they have the information to make the best decisions possible. But I think in this case, this was also one of those that just, I think I take their commentary at face value and trust that what they're telling me is honest and true. They all know that myself and my office staff and the rest of the town staff are doing everything they can, and the school folks are doing everything they can to do the best job possible. And I think they really believe that. And so I think that will continue to come out, I think, over the next month or two as we kind of evolve after this decision of extending my contract out.
Yeah, and the one other piece, and you had referenced kind of the turbulent budget years that we've had, but I think the one other point I'd like to make to pin it to that is, okay, this was potentially not a good budget year, and yet after, 17, 18 hours of FinCom hearings, after council going through there for 6 hours of hearings, effectively the budget as proposed with some minor tweaks was validated.
That's right.
That was the key piece. So, yeah, you may still have disagreed about using the free cash, but it's relatively short-term use, and you've laid out that we have the capability to do that. Now it's going to be beholden on the council and the joint budget committee to pull together that strategy so that we don't have to use the free cash going forward. So we need to, I think, take that moment and say, yes, from this point forward, the budget is the budget. There's no other there. There's no found stuff there. It was validated. And we do have a significant structural deficit that now the council and joint budget are going to work on to help come up with some solutions. People still may not like those, but at least they're coming up with it because we need that.
I think I appreciate that, Steve. I mean, I think after all the wrangling around the budget over the last couple of years and the overrides, which is fair, there's a lot of messaging about waste and fraud, and I've heard about Doge, referred to, frankly, we just got to cut a bunch of stuff. We saw the deputy town administrator get politicized. We've seen some other positions for both the town and the school be politicized, like the arts and cultural economy director, or certain investments in school personnel with too many principals or assistant principals. And at the end of the day, I think after all the review, there really is no waste. There is no fraud. There aren't no reforms that we can do to get out of this. There's no found money anywhere. There's no magic hat, rabbit in a hat. And then the service levels were validated, right? Like we want these amount of officers. We want this amount of ambulance services. We don't want to cut the senior center. We can't cut the library anymore. We don't want to cut our schools anymore. There was a lot of discussion about too many, assistant principals or too many. It was too top heavy, at the school district. That got through, and the superintendent and chair of the school committee got the number they requested in the end. Mm-hmm. So, and going into FY28, which was an excellent pivot, I basically gave out a model last week of about $1 million. So now the deficit is about 20%, 30% lower than what it was going into last year.
Right.
Because we've made the transition to GIC. They're going in now, and I'm kind of excited to see how the joint budget's going to do this. I think they had a conversation last week saying we just need to have kind of a meeting or a charrette where we just get all the ideas out onto the table. And as a committee, I think Councilor Juku is really setting that up, that over the next 6 to 8 to 10, 12, 18 months, whatever it is, 2 years, mm-hmm. the community is going to be able to see how few options they have at trying to address these. Maybe there's some other creative ones out there. We're still dealing with a turbulent federal government and economy. But I think they've got a process outlined. I think they're forming that process as we speak. And I think it wouldn't be any shock to any observer, to the community, including yourself, Steve. The last 8 months, without a ballot question on the ballot, has been a big relief for a lot of taxpayers in town.
Sure.
And a lot of stakeholders in town. And, I think this council is going to do a great job trying to lay out what that menu is moving forward. Right, wrong, or indifferent to what happened in the past, I think it's a great strategy moving forward. So, heading into FY28, we're only looking at about $1 million deficit, which is quite significantly less than last year. And so we're on the right path. We're on the right path. And even if we have to use free cash for a second year, you're going to only use about $1 million, where this past year you used 1.7 or 1.8.
Right.
And then, and so hopefully we can land the plane in a couple of years where there won't be a need for an override question. And I think that would be something that, might be a nice time for the community to reset a little bit.
Yeah, because I think the other side of that is how do we increase the revenue? And we've talked about growth, and some people don't like growth, but there needs to be the right kind of growth in order to allow us to have the revenue to do what we need to do, because, oh, by the way, the services are there and they want those services.
We heard loud and clear, and I know I probably heard it loudest, and I really feel, if you put the school district aside for a moment with the transition of the redistricting a couple of years ago, I think it's been very, very clear to me that the overwhelming amount of citizens in this community were very disheartened that the 2 police officers laid off. They were very disheartened with the ambulance, for sure. You and I both know about the senior center. Part-time nurse was not popular. Cutting the library is never popular because of many easy reasons for any listener to understand.
Right.
And public works and facilities have been hacked quite a bit. And I think people slowly are starting to understand the impact of those millions of dollars of cuts over the last several years to those departments, right? In both the facilities, trails, roads, sidewalks, maintenance, tree trimming, you name it, crosswalk painting, traffic calming, traffic enforcement. I think all of that stuff is really good. So, I'm not saying we're out of the woods yet. I wouldn't obviously say the budget, but I do think going into next year, knowing that we'll have $1 million in free cash to get through another year without hopefully any cuts, is a good position to be in. And as you look around at my colleagues in other cities and towns, a lot of cities and towns are still doing a lot of layoffs. And
right.
We've been able to kind of manage this well enough to where hopefully those days are over. Hopefully the tourniquet has been set. And now it's up to the Joint Budget Subcommittee to unify and come out with a joint strategy moving forward. And I think that's a pretty good place to be.
Yes, indeed, because I think what we'll get into now is you've got a bunch on your plate that the council and all of us in the community are going to find out coming out in September.
We have, I will say as a bit of a joke, the last 8 months, I think, for the elected officials have been, routinely a really good on-ramp and have been a good learning exercise, and it was needed because this fall, there'll certainly be a lot of topics that will generate a lot of conversation in Franklin. Number one, we're going to start the first meeting in September, on September 2nd. There's going to be a beginning discussion on town-owned property. In the macro view, we've got Kate Hinckley coming in to give an overview of how many parcels the town owns, and we're going to slowly go down right into the ones that are still available, of which most people in town know are largely Davis Thayer and the Parmenter schools. And so we've got draft procurements ready to go on the agenda for the community to look at what a draft procurement may look like for Davis Thayer, what a draft procurement may look like for 275 Beaver Street. We've got the police station building committee coming in on September 2nd to justify their decision of the Parmenter as the site of the police station. Just the light and fluffy stuff, Steve, in the community. You know, the easy things that, you know, that's obviously tongue in cheek, but these are historically, these are huge decisions for the long-term piece of the community in terms of what those parcels will look like. And if they don't want to do the police station now, that's fine. But in 5-10 years, you're going to be back looking at it, and I can guarantee it'll be more expensive, and the land will be less. So this is more of not just making a decision. And just to the listeners out there, I don't anticipate them to wrap this up in a day. You know, these are really, really public feedback heavy meetings that will be carrying throughout the entire fall and into the holiday season.
Right. The start is September 2nd.
Start is September 2nd.
And I think the other key piece I'll help to reference and emphasize there is it's a set of dominoes. Because if you make one decision, then that leads to another potential, and it leads to either options or reduction in options the next time around. So there's a set of dominoes that have to be thought of carefully.
And it really starts with the police station location. You know, if the decision is to pause on that for a long time, you know, that may be somebody else's decision after I'm maybe possibly not around. And same thing with Chief Lynch and maybe the successor for him, you know, maybe beyond them. If they choose to choose Parmenter, you're correct. There's a series of dominoes that filter out from that. If they choose to do Davis Thayer, there's a series of dominoes that kind of come from that. So all roads eventually lead back to the police station being the kind of first decision. And that's what Kate and I are going to lay out, and Kevin Harn, when we get to September 2nd. It's just a starter. So hopefully the public has a little bit of an easier time offering feedback, right? So it feels like, okay, if this happens, then these 6 things happen after that. If this happens, then these things happen. And I think that'll be really important. And also, people are going to get used to what a procurement looks like. This is a very, very complicated procurement. These are complicated procurements to do. And then, you know, oh, by the way, in the middle of this is going to be some of the Depot Plaza hearings for Main Street. And
which is a
discussion about a town parking lot. And then, oh, by the way, in between that, the EDC, the Economic Development Subcommittee, are going to be hosting students from UMass Boston all fall to go through our zoning, go through our downtown streetscape, and make recommendations on things that we can do to revitalize downtown. I mean, that's just scraping the surface of some of the early stuff in September. But as you can see, a lot of these decisions have a lot of impact on the future of Franklin.
For sure. For sure.
A couple other topics while we're on it that are going to be popping up. Tax rates. A big goal for the town council this year was to look at a split tax rate or to look at more exemptions on the tax rates. We're going to probably end up having 2 or 3 or 4 workshops to allow in public comment, other data sets. I'm sure the business community will be there. I'm sure the residents will be there. As you know, we've historically had a single tax rate in Franklin, Steve. I don't remember before my time if there was a really earnest discussion on tax rates, but it hasn't really been this vocal since the last year, so that'll be coming up. Flock cameras. I just saw that a reporter asked President Trump today at a press conference about flock cameras, and he said that he'll have some information coming out in a couple of weeks. And I say that not just the idea of flock cameras, have risen to a presidential press conference question.
Right.
Shows you how much, support, dissent, frustration, fear there is at the local level around flock cameras. I expect that to be on a couple of agendas throughout the fall. And then, of course, we have our ceremonial meeting on September 16th, where we'll have Representative Jeff Roy, Senator Rausch are going to come in to do their annual legislative visit. The Franklin Food Pantry, the SAFE Coalition, the 250th Celebration Committee will also be making brief presentations that night. I would also be remiss that night. There are some significantly long-term employees that are retiring, and we're going to say farewell to a bunch of folks who have served the town for over 30 years.
Right.
So actually, the September 16th meeting is a great opportunity to get a lot of state issues out there. We'll hear from Rep Roy and Rep Rausch about what's been going on in Beacon Hill for the last 2 years. I expect that to be a great discussion, but there should also be some fun stuff, as well as the introduction of the Deputy Town Administrator. As well as likely a ratification or a potential ratification of the next chief of police over the next few months, too, over the next couple of months.
Right.
So, I don't know how much more we can do, man.
There's a lot happening.
There's a lot happening, and before you know it, it'll be Thanksgiving and Halloween, and I'm excited to continue on the work, but hopefully that gives all the listeners out there a bit of a sense of the issues that are going to be probably on the council agenda over the next probably 3 or 4 months.
Sure. Well, and it coincidentally, too, at least with the September 2nd and 16th agendas, the Harvest Festival conversation should be, plenty. There'll be a lot of opportunity for that. Never mind just in the farmers market, because they're still going every Friday until the end of October. So, yeah, there's plenty of time to have conversation, find out, get the information, get the accurate info. Chloe, even on the case of the flocks, not all flocks are the same. Our implementation differs from others, so people need to be aware that, the issue does have nuances within it.
It does, and even on the flocks, if there are any listeners out there that are interested in this, just Google Town of Franklin Police flock cameras, and you go straight to our portal with real-time data that is collected on real time. It's transparently right on their website. There's a policy on the usage. We don't really do any of these things that people are alleging we do all around the country. We firmly respect that there's other departments out there and across the United States that may not make the best use of the data, right? Or that may have a lot more cameras than we do.
Sure.
We only have 2, by the way, while people are while the listeners are here, we only have 2 at the interstate exits. But I do understand the national perspective of this, and I do understand that this is becoming a bigger issue nationally. And I also understand that, a lot of communities across the state have started to repeal these. Ultimately, the decision will be on the council's doorstep. It's certainly no harm, no foul to me in terms of my decision. I mean, it's not really my call. If the council wants us to remove them, we'll remove them. But there'll be a pretty good public discussion, I think, around all of this stuff, over the next few months. So I'm looking forward to it. A lot of great work coming. There's still tons more I haven't even told you, but, obviously, hopefully that wets the whistle out there for people to tune into the meetings. And, obviously the recordings on Franklin Matters and Franklin TV and YouTube. I mean, it seems to me that if you can't find us, you're not looking that hard. I mean, we're all over the place and on Zoom and hybrid, and so hopefully people will join us and watch in and tune in and have their voice heard on all these issues.
Sure. Well, thank you for taking time from your busy day to recap. I know it seems like we'll get into a more routine capture on these because we've got plenty to talk about as the fall comes on us.
There'll be a lot to talk about, and I hope the citizens talk about these things too. These are big issues in your community. It's a huge time to be here. There's a huge shift in demographics and change happening, and if all you need to do out there if you're listening is just shoot us a quick email. Just give us a quick call, stop in, say hi, see us on the street. We'll be happy to respond to you. We'll be happy to engage you, and we'll be happy to educate everybody. So appreciate all the time as usual, Steve.
Thank you again. And to the listeners, thank you for listening. And we do this, of course, because Franklin matters.
We are now producing this in collaboration with Franklin TV and Franklin Public Radio. This podcast is my public service effort for Franklin, but we can't do it alone. We can always use your help. How can you help? If you can use the information that you find here, please tell your friends and neighbors. If you don't like something here, please let me know. Through this feedback loop, we can continue to make improvements. And I thank you for listening. For additional information, please visit franklinmatters.org. If you have questions or comments, you can reach me directly at suresteve@gmail.com. The music for the intro and exit was provided by Michael Clark and the group East of Shirley. The piece is titled Ernesto Mañana, copyright Michael Clark and Tintype Tunes in 2008, and used with their permission. I hope you enjoy. By the way, you can also subscribe and listen to Franklin Matters Radio on your favorite podcast app. Search in podcasts for Franklin Matters.